You have heard the saying, life is 20% what happens and 80% what you think about it. Now, I understand the meaning and intent of this saying, but I absolutely hate how this phrase is used. Life is 100% what happens. Your reaction and perspective on what happens is what determines your mental outlook. I do believe we need to find the good or have a positive attitude, but mostly we need to look to God for our happiness and peace. Over the next two lessons, we're going to look at two miracles, one wrapped inside the other. There's much we can learn here, and I want to take a little creative license in looking at a story we've read many times from a slightly different perspective. So I'm going to start off with what I would call three perspectives. I'm going to read you the story from three different accounts, beginning in Luke chapter 8, verse 40 through 56. It says, "So it was when Jesus returned that the multitude welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And behold, there came a man named Jairus, and he was a ruler of the synagogue. And he fell down at Jesus' feet and begged him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. But as he went, the multitudes thronged him. Now a woman having a flow of blood for 12 years, who had spent all her livelihood on physicians and could not be healed by any, came from behind and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. And Jesus said, 'Who touched me?' Then all denied it. Peter and those with him said, 'Master, the multitudes throng and press you, and you say, "Who touched you?" But Jesus said, "Somebody touched me, for I perceived power going out from me." Now when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him. She declared to him in the presence of all the people the reason she had touched him, and how she was immediately healed immediately. And he said to her, "Daughter, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And while he was still speaking, someone came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher." But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, "Do not be afraid, only believe, and she will be made well." When he came to the house, he permitted no one to go in except Peter, James, and John, and the father and mother of the girl. Now all wept and mourned for her, but he said, "Do not weep, she is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him, knowing that she was dead. But he put them all outside, took her by the hand and called, saying, "Little girl, arise." Then her spirit returned, and she rose immediately, and he commanded that she be given something to eat. And her parents were astonished, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened. So that's a story we've heard a bunch of times. And like I said, I'm going to take a little moment here, and I'm going to give you the three accounts. They're not all quite as long as that one, but I'm going to give you three different perspectives. The second perspective I'm going to give you is from Matthew chapter 9, beginning at verse 18. And it says, "While he spoke these things to them, behold, a ruler came and worshipped him, saying, 'My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand upon her, and she will live.' So Jesus arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. And suddenly a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched the hem of his garment. For she said to herself, 'If only I may touch his garment, I shall be made well.' But Jesus turned around. When he saw her, he said, 'Be of good cheer, daughter, your faith has made you well.' And the woman was made well from that hour." When Jesus came into the ruler's house and saw the flute players and the noisy crowd wailing, he said to them, Make room, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him, but when the crowd was put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went out unto all the land. So Matthew has a little, shall we say, a little more succinct version of what took place. And last, I want to give you the perspective from Mark. And Mark is found in chapter 5, beginning at verse 22. It says, "And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, 'My little daughter lies at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live.' So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him. Now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years, and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment, for she said, "If I only may touch his clothes, I shall be made well." Immediately the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." While he was still speaking, someone came from the ruler of the synagogue's house who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not be afraid, only believe." And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult and those who wept and wailed loudly. When he came in, he said to them, "Why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they ridiculed him. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and the mother to the child and those who were with them and entered where the child was lying. When he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Tathia kumai," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age, and they were overcome with great amazement. But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and he said that something should be given her to eat. Now, I know I read a lot of scripture right there, and I did it because I want you to see the three different perspectives on that story, because they're all a little bit different. But I want to begin looking at this by asking the question, why 12? Why 12? The daughter that is dead is 12 years old. The woman that has the issue of blood has had this issue of blood for 12 years. Why 12? Well, 12 in the Bible is perfection of government or perfection of rule. So there's some potential significance. Now, I said I wanted to take some creative license today in looking at this story because I just feel like God's has been talking to me about something, and that question is there. Why 12? So let's look at this from these different perspectives and look at this issue of 12. Why 12? Let me ask you this. How long is 12? This little girl is 12 years old. Is that a long time? Would you say, "Oh my goodness, that is an old person"? No, you would not. You would say, "Oh my goodness, that is a very young person. That's no time at all. They've only just begun." And yet, the woman with the issue of blood has had this going on for 12 years. Would you say, "Oh, that's not any big deal. That's a short time"? No, you would not. You would say, "That's like forever. That's a long time." So the perspective on 12 in this story is very different when we talk about these two miracles, and they are one wrapped around the other. So let's take the two miracles. I said let's take the two miracles dissected. So miracle 1, part 1. Miracle 1, part 1 is that there is a young girl. Her father is a ruler within the temple. This young girl, this ruler, this perfection of government or rule, they have status. They have man's idea of things being in control. And yet she falls ill. And he comes and says to Jesus, "Come and heal my daughter." He reaches out in faith to God. "Come and heal my daughter." His government, if you will, is all together. His rule is all together. But he recognizes that isn't enough. His standing is not going to get his daughter well. His standing is not going to get his daughter back. He's looking for a different answer, but his experience in the temple, he's I read a commentary said, this is probably a ruler at a temple where Jesus has been asked to speak before. So he has some idea, and he's looking to God for the answer. He's looking to Jesus for the answer. And we're going to take miracle 1 and really examine it more closely next week. So now let's look at miracle 2. Miracle 2 is the woman with the issue of blood. So let's kind of do the overview. Here's a woman. She has an issue of blood. She's had it for 12 years. She says, if I can just touch the hem of his garment. This was the ceremonial fringe on the garment that the priest would wear as the ceremonial fringe. It was identification. She says, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, I could be made whole. And so what's the issue? Well, the issue comes down to this. She has an issue of blood. She has a hemorrhaging type condition. And this has been a problem for some time, 12 years. Again, the perfection of government or the perfection of rule. Now, what has she done in this 12 years? Well, our first account in Mark gives us the best description of that. And what it tells us is that, let me back up one page here, I apologize. What it tells us is this. It says, now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. This is follow the science. This is what the medical profession has to offer. This is the medical answer. She's done what they asked. And she suffered for it. It's not one quack doctor, many physicians. It's not one idea that didn't work. It's many things that she suffered. It's not even that they didn't work. They made it worse, not better. She had spent all that she had, and she was no better. That's what Mark tells us. She had spent all that she had, and she was no better. She had done everything that government, that rules, that following the science, she had done everything that perfection of 12 would indicate. She had done it all. And Mark tells us that not only had she gotten no better, but rather it had grown worse. Her situation was not better, it was worse. When she heard about Jesus, see, the government rules weren't helping her. The medical rules weren't helping her. The treatments they were providing weren't helping her. Apparently her insurance had run out, and I'm kidding, because it said she was in financial ruin. She had done everything. And it says, when she heard about Jesus. There's a time for each of us. We can look and we can say, that's the time I heard about Jesus. That's the time when everything changes, when I heard about Jesus. When she heard about Jesus, it says, she came behind him in the crowd. Now understand, the rules, this perfect government situation that was in place, said that she wasn't even supposed to be in a crowd. She was considered unclean. She wasn't supposed to be in a crowd. She wasn't supposed to be out there. The risk of exposure for her was very great, that she would be exposed as not following the rules. So here she is. She's risking everything. She's risking everything in order to simply touch his garment. Because it says, for she said, if only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well. It's always important to look at the word shall in the Bible versus will. Shall is definitive. Will is a function of your will. Shall is a statement of fact. If I touch his garment, I shall be made well. This is faith in God. She has faith for something at this point. Now, we've been talking about an atmosphere for miracles. And we started off, we've talked about the presence of God must be there. The manifest presence of God happens when his presence is there. It's manifest in a real way. Jesus is there. Faith is an important factor in it's sometimes misconstrued one way or the other, but faith is definitely a factor in an atmosphere for miracles. Here the faith is in her heart. If I simply can touch him, if I can simply touch his clothes, the hem of his garment, I shall be made well. And so she's risked everything to touch Jesus. We've talked about the importance of our relationship to God and the salvation side of an atmosphere for miracles. And that hasn't changed as we move into this lesson at all. That's why I said before, when she heard about Jesus. When she heard about Jesus, she suddenly was touched in her spirit, and she had hope when she heard about Jesus. Our life can be all screwed up. The greatest miracle that we can ever receive is when we get our heart right with God, is when we make him Lord in our life. That is a forever changing experience for you. There are people who say, well, I tried religion and it didn't work. Okay, well, you need to hear about Jesus. Because when we make him Lord of our life, when we ask him to forgive our sins, it will change your life forever. And it will change your eternity forever. And it's not so much that we walk into it saying, well, if I just say the sinner's prayer, I'll get a miracle of some other, financial miracle or health miracle or whatever. When we come and we're serious with God and we say, God, I need you. I forgive me. I have sinned and I need you. When we make that step, that opens the door for all kinds of things to happen, that for God to move in our life. That's got to be the first thing. When she heard about Jesus, she said, if I only touch the hem of his garment, I will be made well. And then Mark goes on and says, immediately, 12 years, changed just like that. Immediately, the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction. There was something that happened. There was a physical change in her situation. There was a change in what she was feeling. There was a change within her very being. It changed everything. When we encounter Jesus Christ, when we reach out and touch him, it changes everything. A few years ago, there was a song that said, I will never be the same again. And that is so true. I'll never be the same again when I encounter Jesus, when I reach out in faith and I touch him. When I touch even just the hem of his garment, I'll never be the same again. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that power had gone out of him, in other words, he knew something had happened wasn't that he was drained or diminished, It's not like a video game. Oh, life support's now, 1/3 down or whatever. But he knew something had happened. He turned around and said, "Who touched my clothes?" In the middle of all the things going around, who touched my clothes? And the disciples are like, "You're asking who touched you? Are you kidding?" But see, there's something, when we reach out and we touch Jesus, we have his full attention. There can be all kinds of things going on all around, but we have his attention. If you're a parent, you know what it's like to be in a crowd and have one of your kids call out to you. You hear him instantly. That's my child. And he looked around to see who had done this thing. And the woman was fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her. She was fearing and trembling because she knew that what she did was a great risk. She wasn't supposed to do this. It wasn't okayed by the physicians or the government. She wasn't supposed to. She wasn't supposed to have faith, reach out, touch him, and become changed. She wasn't supposed to be healed. She wasn't supposed to. It didn't follow the rules. And as I said, it's wrapped inside this miracle of the 12-year-old girl, right? Where the ruler coming saying, "Hey, can you help my daughter?" Here's a woman who's saying, "I need to just reach out and touch him so I can be helped," even if it's against the rules. And so she was fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened to her. She came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. She confessed the whole thing. Here's what happened. I've had this problem for 12 years. I've tried everything. I've been ruined by all of the things I've tried, and they've actually made it worse. But when I heard about you, I knew that if I could just touch the hem of your garment, that I would be made whole. I would be forever changed. And see, that's the problem for many of us today. We've lost hope that things can be different. We've lost hope that there's an answer. But see, here's the thing. I want you to hear about Jesus. Because there is hope. There is an answer. There is a miracle waiting when you reach out and touch him. And that can be, depending on where you are in your relationship, a simple matter of just coming before him and asking him to save you from your sins, forgive your sins, and be Lord in your life. If you've already done that, it's part of having our faith built up when you stop and realize, when you hear about Jesus, when you realize, you know what, there is an answer that will fix the problems that I have. I need to turn to Jesus and bring it to him. And people say, well, that seems kind of simplistic. You know what? The Bible is very simple. Oh, it's got great truths and things that are in it, but the plan of salvation is very simple. The message that God loves you is very simple. The message that you don't have to live the way you're living, that you can have a better outcome, it's very real. In our world today, with all of the uncertainty and all the things that are going on, we need to be relying on Jesus. That is our answer. That is our peace. That is our hope. So she came and she told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." Your hope, your evidence of things not seen, your answer has made you well. Because Jesus is the answer. Jesus is our hope, and he's our faith. He says to her, "Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? But that's the message that's there for all of us. Go and be healed. Go and be healed of your affliction. So put it in perspective. Here's a woman, 12 years, no hope. 12 years suffering. 12 years trying everything. 12 years, nothing works. I mean, she had stayed up and watched late night TV and seen all the miracle things that you could send 1995 for. But wait, for the next 30 minutes, you can get 2 bottles, right? She had done all that and had gotten worse. She had tried all the diets. She had done the holistic diet thing. Didn't work. She had spent all of her money. That in itself creates a whole nother problem. Now she's not only sick, doesn't feel good at all, but now she's suffering and she's broke. It's something you look at and you say that's hopeless. And there's people watching this video today that you feel like you're in that position. You've done everything and you're just suffering. It's like, why even try? Well, the answer is very simple. You need to hear about Jesus. You need to reach out and touch him. Knowing that if I can just reach out and touch him, I don't have to suffer like this anymore. My life can be different. Well, 20% of what happens to you in life is really controlled by the 80% of how you think about it. And I said I didn't like that, and here's the reason why. This woman was suffering 100% from what had happened to her. And yes, her change came as a result of saying, if I can simply touch the hem of his garment. But it's not positive thinking in and of itself that gets you anywhere. But it is recognition that I need to give 100% of my life to Jesus Christ. When I have his full attention, when I reach out and touch him, when I set my heart right with him, that's when my miracle happens. That's when my faith is built up. That's when what happens in life changes. My perspective changes. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord. My help comes from God. Maybe you lost your job. If your help comes from God, you don't have to worry about that. Maybe you have a health crisis. If your help comes from God, you don't have to worry about that. If I'm not worried about these things, if I'm able to trust God in these areas, if I'm able to do the mental battle, if you will, the spiritual warfare of the mind, and not listen to the accuser, not listen to what man says and the circumstances say, but if I'm able to focus myself on my trust in God, that there is where my hope comes from, that will change my perspective, and I'll be looking in the right place for my answers. And God is faithful to provide those answers, and because he's faithful to provide those answers, I don't have to live this way anymore. 12 years is a long time to be in misery. And yet, her cure was immediate. I've said before, and others have said it as well. I think Pastor Chris likes to say, God moves in the suddenlies. And that's true. Our problem sometimes is we look at things and we say, it's never going to change. I've had this problem 12 years, it's never going to change. All of the things that are never going to change, and yet they all change in an instant. Your life is changed constantly in instants. In an instant, you get the job offer for the job is your dream job. In an instant, you get the news that you have a incurable disease. In an instant, you get the news that you're free of your disease. In an instant, you can be in a car accident. In an instant, if I played the lottery, I guess, in an instant, you could win the lottery. It happens suddenly. Our whole life is made up like that. But we look and we go, 12 years is so long. But when your answer comes in the immediate, 12 years doesn't even matter anymore. It's over. Our perspective, how we look, where we look for our answers. I need to look to Jesus. That's my answer. I've told this story before regarding my dad. My grandmother prayed for him for years and years and years and years. And he was basically an alcoholic. Things not going in a good way. Playing in bars. And she continued to pray for him. But she didn't see any answer. And he'd been over, and he was living in Petaluma at the time. He'd been over and playing in a bar in Lakeport, and went to go home. And his whole life was just like this, 12 years of suffering. His whole life was things that weren't going right. Wasn't happy. Wasn't good at all. And he started across the Hopland Grade, which still can be kind of a tough drive, but it was a particularly worse drive then. And as he was driving across the Hopland Grade, he said out loud, "There's no hope for me." Because he was at that level of despair. And he said in an instant, he heard the voice of God say, "Yes, there is. You can come to me." And driving across the Hopland Grade, he gave his heart to the Lord. He said, tears running down his cheeks and stuff. And he got to Petaluma. He walked into the house. And my grandmother looked at him and said, "Bill, what's wrong? You've been crying." And he said, "I gave my heart to Jesus Christ." And she said, "Really?" She'd been praying for years. The answer to her prayer was in an instant. Really? The answer to his problem was in an instant. Really? You can give all of your cares, all of your worries, all of your problems to Jesus Christ, and in an instant, it can be taken care of. 12 years. If I can just touch the hem of his garment, I will never be the same again. So this morning, take a moment. Let God know your heart. Ask him to be your Lord and Savior. And in an instant, he can take care of whatever's bothering you today. That is an atmosphere for miracles, and that will change your perspective. And that's it for this week.